Anna Wilgenbush, first UD All-American in any event, the cross-country All-American 2019. In the 1500 meters track and field, her PR 5:06:35, third fastest UD 1500 of all time, and she has 2 of the top 5 times in the decade. Anna's probably the newest of the team, the youngest as far as when she got to UD of anyone on this team. Is it at all surprising in any way that you have someone who just makes it in right at the end, making it to this team?
In general, no, because of how strong of a runner Anna is. For the 15, a little bit surprising, because it's definitely not her strongest event.
And so, as we look at the numbers for the 1500 meters, all time, her time of 5:06:35 wins the conference once in 28 years. Unfortunately, it does not win at all in the decade. 4 times in 28 years, it medals, a gold, a silver, 2 bronze, and unfortunately, no medals during the decade. She does place a few times. She gets a few 6th place points, a 4th and a 5th place. Her average point in the event, 0.9. Her median score is a tie between 6th and 7th, so 0.5, and her most frequent result is non-scoring. As you mentioned, not one of her stronger events, but she's definitely, while it's not one of her stronger events, she's still a very deserving runner, as we've seen in other distance events and in her cross-country career.
Again, yeah, one season in the 2010s, and I'm not surprised that she made it. She'll obviously come up in the long distance events as well, but that was an incredible race, I think, at Commerce, where she ran this 15 PR.
And so those are our selections for the men's and women's 8 and 1500 meter races. The middle distance runners, Greg Pivarunis, the clean sweep. On the men's side, the 8 and the 15, as you can see on your screen. And Megan Darris and Anna Wilgenbush, the 800 and 1500 meter runners. So as we close out for this week's episode, what are your final thoughts?
The strength of the mid-distance. Obviously, Greg reached really high highs when he peaked, but we had some really talented mid-distance runners. I mean, even looking at the second and third all-time, UD runners behind our selections, I thought the list was pretty strong. In the 800, we had 3 other guys sub 2. I mentioned Danielle, Colleen, the 800. I don't know. It's a strong group. I think if we made a team of mid-distance runners, it's a strong group. Like the guy behind Greg, Ryan, I think medaled almost every year. Ryan McEnany. I'm sure we'll mention him later, but I'm impressed by the depth in this group.
All right, so we're now joined by the University of Dallas all-decade middle distance sweeper in the 800 and the 15, Greg Pivarunis. Greg calling us in from Buffalo, New York. How are you doing today, Greg?
I'm doing well, guys. How about yourselves?
Doing all right so far today. Good. All right, so swept the middle distance, the 800 and the 15 selections to the all-decade team. What's your reaction? How do you feel being named to 2 different events?
It's a great honor. I think going into my senior year, I wasn't sure if I was going to get the 1500. It was a tough record to beat. So having both of those, definitely very, very proud of that.
And so the records that we're talking about, the 800 and the 15, 156.87, the still standing 800 meter record, and 358.69, the still standing 1500 meter record, both run in 2010, back in 2010. So for you, what's the most special part about being a part of the UD all-decade team?
Very special part.
And more generally, being a part of UD track, just in general.
Well, just my time at the University of Dallas was very special to me. I feel like I've made some good friendships over that time, received an excellent education, not just in the classroom, but in just spending time with some very intelligent people. And that really translated over to track as well. Having a bunch of folks who were very earnest about academics as well as athletics really made it a lot of fun. Plus, everyone was out there having a good time, and I think we were able to sort of balance study and athletics very effectively.
All right, so obviously you had a great career, as we mentioned, the 2 middle distance records. What do you attribute your success in track to?
Some of the success I attribute to just having some, God-given talent and having people around me, especially early on in high school, some of my coaches, be there to sort of say, wow, you're okay at running. You should keep pursuing this regardless of where you go to college. And my parents, really, my dad, sometime, I don't know, before I broke the record in the 1500, said, wow, Greg, you can do that. And I wasn't so sure at the time. I'd been working pretty hard, had some changeover of coaches, but he knew I could do it. And when I found out, I called him and he was pretty excited, but he said I was right, and he was. So my dad, and definitely just some divine gifts and just having the people in my life. Plus, I think Dallas was a nice, I don't know, sort of a nice ground to not only learn academically, but also be able to participate athletically, and I was grateful for that opportunity.
All right, so you're one of 4 athletes on the all-decade team who never got a chance to compete in the SCAC, graduated in 2010. UD didn't join until 2012. How different do you think things would have been for you? How do you think your career would have been if you were actually competing in a conference and competing at conference championships every year?
I never really got a chance to think about it before this because we just didn't have a conference. We did have something with cross country with the Northeast Athletic Conference, which involved traveling to New York for a race in cross country. But I think it would have been nice to have joined the SCAC when I was there. I don't regret my time. Maybe that would have led to some different stuff, but it's all water under the bridge, really.
And well, do you think with how, because your 800 and 1500 times were pretty good, and we'll share the data we have in a moment, but do you think you would have found another level if you were competing in a conference?
I might have been able to. Again, it's hard to say in retrospect what could have happened, but I think if my 1500, I do remember not having people behind me during the race and being able to set it myself. But if there was a couple more 800-meter races that, especially in a championship, there might have been maybe a little bit lower of a time. I'm not really sure though. I'd want to hear those times.
All right. Well, we won't delay anymore. We'll go to the theoretical data that we've mentioned earlier in the show today. So the 800 and the 1500, as we mentioned, 156.87 and 358.69. Your 800-meter PR would win conference 13 out of 28 years in the SCAC, 3 out of 10 in the decade. Your further breakdown, 13, 11, and 0, gold, silver, bronze in all time, 24 to 28 years you'd medal. You'd medal 8 out of 10 years in the decade, 3, 5, and 0, with additional finishes of 5th place and 7th, averaging 7.2 points as your average score. Your median and most frequent results, 2nd place, 8 points in the 800. And in the 15, the better of the two, out of the 28 years of the conference, 22 times you would win with your PR, 7 out of 10 in the decade, 26 out of 28 years you would medal, 22, 2, and 2, gold, silver, bronze, 7, 1, and 0 in the decade, gold, silver, bronze, plus a 5th and 6th place finish, average points scored 8.1, and your median and most frequent results both first place for the full 10 points. So, as you mentioned, this is the first time you're hearing all of those numbers being put together at the same time. What's your reaction?
Wow. That would have been a lot of fun, I think. I'm not sure. I know my sophomore year I wasn't on campus. I was in Rome during sophomore track, so I wouldn't have competed. It would have been exciting to see, how I could have done junior and senior years. So that's fun to know that, I was up at the top had we joined the conference. I'm very proud of the times, so I'm glad they stand up well to, current competition.
Yeah, I mean, the 8.1, I don't have I have this data compiled, just not in front of me at the moment, but the 8.1 point average is, I believe, one of the top, of everyone on the all-decade team, I believe is one of the top 5 best scores. So, yeah, so your 1500 is one of the best events in the all-decade team.
Wow. That would have been fun to get in a sprint to the finish with that time at the championship for sure.
It's funny to know, because did you run that at Trinity? Was it
I did.
The Trinity invite? Or?
Yeah, that was the Trinity invite in the, I think it was the evening, the Trinity, or the Tiger Twilight, that's the one.
Yeah,
for Trinity.
That's funny. That's where conference typically every other year is hosted. So, funny enough, that's where it would have been. That's cool.
It's a great track, and the weather was nice, so it all worked out really nicely.
Love that for the distance events.
All right, well, thank you, Greg, for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for hosting, and great honor. So I'm very happy. Thank you for the honor.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
Good to see you, Greg.
Nice seeing you, Kevin. Nice seeing you, Matt.
That was Greg Fiberunas, the 800 and 1500 meter selection for the UD track and field all-decade team. Thank you for joining us this week for our middle distance reveals. Next week we'll move on to the long distance, the 5 and 10,000 meter races. I'm Kevin McGurk here with my co-host and partner, Matthew Barber, and we'll see you next week for the long distance.